Russell Hobbs Show today. I've got an amazing guest. She's dynamic, she's very brilliant, and she is inspiring. Ashley Berges is in the studio with us.
I'm glad to be here. Thanks for inviting me. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. And, you know, we had so much fun sort of getting ready to do the show, talking about real things in life. And so we'll just jump into, doing the show now. So, I've known you a couple of years now, I guess, and you are such a mover and shaker out there in the universe and helping a lot of people. And it's really cool to see all the things that you put out on a daily basis. I mean, you're so productive, it's impressive. So I guess one thing I want to know is, what was your life like growing up? Where'd you grow up and what was it like?
Interesting. Good question. Growing up, I think was like a lot of people, definitely growing up was interesting. I had great, interesting parents that gave me a lot to learn from. Being an only child, though, was interesting. I always wanted to have an older brother. And I remember my mother's sarcasm when I finally asked her. I said, I want an older brother. She's like, it's a little late to ask for that. It's not going to happen. I always wanted to have a sibling, at siblings weekends in college and all that kind of stuff. Didn't get it. But growing up as an only child, it was good. I took care of my dog. I had a Pomeranian named Snuggles. And I came home. I made my own dinner. I had both parents were very, very workaholics. And so, it was kind of me and I was kind of on my own and they were there. But it was an interesting growing up period, and I learned a lot from it, to be honest with you.
I bet. Being an only child is a very unique situation because you have more parenting, but you're also become more independent, I guess, and it seems... I don't know, different. It was different from everybody that I know that was the only child. There was usually a mother in the home or somebody was there. My mom is amazing, but my mom was out getting her master's and her doctorate, and my dad was on the road all the time for work, and so it was really me and my dog, and so I kind of got to learn how to fend for myself. I learned how to cook for myself. The interesting part is I learned how to use chopsticks when I was 5. So I would use chopsticks with all my food, no matter what it was. And even if it was chicken fingers, didn't matter what it was, So it wasn't just the ramen, it was also the chicken fingers. But I learned a lot. I learned how to be really self-sufficient. And so I think that's a really good point. And so I got to be really independent at a young age. Wow, that says a lot about sort of the over-parenting thing can create kids who are maybe entitled and not independent enough. So you were just... in an intelligent way, you were just sort of do it yourself.
Thrown into the deep end, I remember I learned how to wash clothes, when I was 6 and everything else. So it was you learn how to take care of those things. You learn how to eat and take care of your own thing. You learn how to sit. I would sit in front of the TV. We had this little table and I would put a pillow underneath my butt and I would sit there and eat. And I'd have my, my chopsticks and no matter what I was eating, and I would feed the dog at night and get ready for bed. And then usually my mom would get home pretty late and we would see each other for 30 minutes and then I would go to bed and start up the whole next day. But I learned a lot about how to be, how to really take care of yourself. And I think a lot of people nowadays need to learn that. And I think a lot of folks that are growing up in high school, in college, and in middle school, I think there's a lot of helicopter parents right now, too. There's a lot of that. And that could really change the dynamic of our society if they were allowed to learn a lot of the skill set that some of them are not learning at all. I mean, they're getting married and then their wife or somebody else is taking care of them and they're not really learning about the next step.
Yeah, that's really kind of an epidemic going on right now. So one thing I have to ask now, since you were committed to the chopsticks, what was your breakfast cereal of choice?
Wow.
Because the Frosted Flakes would fit in some sticks pretty easily, I guess.
The breakfast cereal, it was gross. You're gonna gross out. I don't know if you're gonna like it. Remember grape nuts?
Oh yeah, I love grape. They're very sour and real and healthy.
It was like eating cardboard, but yeah, I would have grape nuts and blueberries.
Wow, you were so healthy from the get-go.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm trying and blueberries.
But wait a minute, a grape nut and a chopstick. That's tough. You must
couldn't do cereal with it. You couldn't do cereal or soup. Only soup with noodles. You can't do soup, regular soup or that. Or
okay, so we got a confession
or ice
out
cream.
Here.
Or ice cream. You can't do ice cream.
You used a spoon for breakfast.
I did.
Okay.
I did.
Okay.
I did.
I'm just, we want to make
fork,
this clear.
a spoon. Either one.
Okay, so where was all this going on? What city did you grow up in? Where was this taking place? Where's the setting for this story?
Okay, good one. Yeah, well, we lived a lot of different places. My dad worked as a salesman, so for a corporation, and so we lived all over. But eventually, we ended up coming to Texas, and so after being in like New Orleans, Ohio, Wisconsin, all kinds of places, we came to Texas, and so most of my formative years have been in Texas. So I've been here for quite some time, and I've left and come back, but it seems like Texas has my heart or something going on. So
Yeah, Texas is awesome. I mean, it's too hot in the summer, and everybody in the world's moving here. But it's such a great, the spirit of Texas, the vibe, the opportunities. It's a beautiful place. I'm from here too.
okay, so you're originally from Texas.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you keep coming back. You keep.
Well, I never left.
Oh, okay.
I lived away for 1 year in Alaska long ago, but I've lived in Texas my whole life. And that's, it sounds kind of weird to say you live somewhere that long, but it's just destiny has had it that way. So I want to know what you were like in high school. What were you like walking down the hall? High school.
High school. Okay, high school. Well, okay, high school, I was in debate. So I was actually a national debater on the national circuit. So I did that and debated almost every weekend because we had to debate regional, local, and national tournaments. Because in order to actually do the national debate tournaments, we had to actually win the local and regional to get the money from the school to allow us to do that. And so I was constantly debating, constantly writing cases, constantly going to debate tournaments. But I was also a pretty cool kid, but I wasn't like the coolest kids, but I knew the coolest kids. I knew everybody in high school. So that was the coolest thing. I knew everybody. I knew everybody. And so I would have to say I was kind of someone that knew everybody, connected with everybody, didn't have any enemies, didn't have any real problems with that. But, really liked everybody, but I had that niche. So it was that debate niche, and that was the thing. So
that's a great thing to do, the debate club early on. One of my sons, I really wanted him to do debate.
Okay.
Because he's a natural at that, right?
He naturally argues very well.
No, he's just a natural antagonist to any situation. He'll show the counterpoint and things like that. And a friend of mine, his daughter did very well in debate. So you were really smart and sort of courageous then to be in debate. And so you kind of had friends in each group in high school.
Oh, yeah.
So in your high school, which high school did you go to?
Grapevine.
Grapevine High School. Mm-hmm. So tell me the cultural tribalism that was in your school. Because when I was in school, we had the freaks, the socials. I mean, this is what we called it. Everybody in high school. When I was going to high school, this is what everybody was called. You were the freaks, the socials, the jocks, or the ropers, which was the country type, cowboy type that were actually the cowboys that were on the edge of town that would come to the school. We still had these things called ropers back then, in Texas. So, what did you guys call your crowds at Grapevine when you went to school? Because you're younger than me, obviously.
Yeah, okay, the interesting thing is that I had friends in all those groups. Every group. I wasn't really titled, but I had friends that were, I guess you would consider like athletes. Then you had your cheerleader, your athletes. You had like the kids that obviously were partying and having a good time. That were kind of the cooler kids, you had those groups. You had the nerds, kind of to a degree, and then you had kind of just the real smart ones, and those were the ones that were interesting. And then you had the ones that were they couldn't really fit in. They didn't really know how to fit in, and so you had that group, kind of the outliner group.
So you had the nerds, the jocks,
the athletes, yeah,
and then the Island of Misfit Toys.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so you didn't really fit in any group, but you were friends with everybody.
Yeah, friends with everybody. Invited to parties, invited to places, constantly invited to things, which is interesting. I hung out with the drama folks, or I'd hang out with some of the cheerleaders, or hang out. It was always good. It was always fun. But I was always myself. And so that's why I never really fell into one specific group, because there were things in those groups that were happening that I wasn't doing or I wasn't interested in. And so I think that you kind of go from, it's almost like when you find your tribe, you find your tribe. So I never really found my set tribe. Debate was awesome, and we had that debate in common, but a lot of the other things we didn't have in common, so that was interesting.
Yeah, let me ask you something on debate. I'm interested. What were the typical or cross-section of topics that you handled in debate?
Oh, it was so long. I actually started debate in middle school. So I actually started debate in middle school, started debate camps in middle school. So I started on this thread like back in the beginning of middle school, which is really weird for most people. So that's not a normal deal. But, you know, there were so many resolutions that I can't even remember. But one of the biggest things that I did that was different in debate from most people is that I did Lincoln Douglas debate, but I actually switched up the negative concept. So you have your affirmative side, your negative side, and then on the negative side, you would write a case like you would on the affirmative side with Lincoln Douglas debate. But I made a little small like change to that because there's a different type of debate that they had that was team debate. And so you would run disads on the team debate against the resolution. And so what I did is I took that kind of concept and I would run almost like a disad argumentation against the affirmative side in Lincoln Douglas. And so I would change up my case all the time, basically going completely against their case and then, showing how there's just no way that they can bring this to term. But it was really neat. So there's everything from prison reform to finding justice to, ensuring security, a lot of stuff with the social contracts and Rousseau, Hobbs, Locke, all kinds of the new, philosophers and that sort of thing. And then I also did like foreign extemp and domestic extemp as well. So I did that too. And then I also did Congress. And so I was actually in nationals 3 years in a row in Congress for nationals for debate as well. So, I kind of bridged that gap.
Interesting that many of your subjects are still so currently being debated.
Oh yeah,
right?
It's the same problems. It's the same issues. We're still figuring it out.
Yeah, or somebody's figuring it out. Yes, or maybe even though after it's figured out, it can't be changed sometimes.
Well, you're right. I mean, think about we have a lot of juggernaut issues, like some of the biggest issues we have, like prison reform is a huge issue. I don't know if it's ever going to be figured out. And then we have privatized prisons and we have all these issues and the money that's being made and everything else that goes into the situation. It's a stack. It's like, how do you begin to change the problem? How do you begin to get to that source of the issue and look at the real issue, which is these people are not getting rehabilitated. These people have issues. They need to be rehabilitated. We need to help them. They need psychological help. They need coaching. They need therapy, and we're not giving it, And so that's the big underlining problem, and that's like the festering issue. But yet we have all those issues on top. And how do you dig in and change things?
Right. It doesn't come easily, and knowledge is power.
Exactly.
But so, do you ever watch debate now, or listen rather on say like PBS? I'll be driving sometimes. I don't know if it's Sunday night. And they'll have debate of different topics on PBS.
Okay.
It's really great. I mean, it's very well, facilitated, and they have really great guests on there, and it's current issues. I mean, PBS is definitely a liberal venue, but they're pretty fair with housing these debates, and they're showing both sides of many issues. I'll recommend it.
I'll have to check it out. I haven't watched it. I remember back in the day, like Crossfire and stuff like that, but I haven't really listened. I think I haven't. Maybe I should.
Well, debate is one of my favorite things, and it's a lost art in our society, it seems. I think that's why social media has grown. One reason that social media has just blossomed and everybody's addicted to it is because it allows people to debate. All the nobodies can actually have a voice in debate, because no longer are we in London, where you get on your soapbox at Hyde Park and you have these debates and everything. It was sort of pretty squelched out until the social media revolution, and everybody can get on and argue about whatever, whenever, with whoever they want to do.
That's true.
And so I dig that you were into that. It's a very, I think, it's inspiring. It's I think productive. Healthy debate makes everybody get smarter.
I agree with you. The problem is lately I don't know how much healthy debate there is. And I think a lot of people take for face value what they hear and what they see, and they need to really start doing some due diligence and start analyzing things a little better and start coming from their gut and start thinking about what does this mean? What does this say? Let me do some research. Let me go back and look at some, let me look at historical reference. Let me look at this. Let me look at that. Let me get a good idea. Let me get a good beat on things. Let me check out these 7 sources. Let me go outside of the country, maybe look at another news source. Maybe I check this out. Maybe I get a little deeper. And I think if people could do that, I think they would start realizing it's not as simple as sometimes we think it is. And it's, when you go on with, I don't like to use the word conspiracy theory. I hate using that terminology, but there's a lot of people that are pushing a lot of different fear factors, and some of that might be real. Some of it is really far from reality, but it's interesting how some people, we can pick up on that, or we can just watch CNN, or we just watch Fox, and we go, oh, that's our truth. And I think that's where the slippery slope is in our society. And I think people are just getting these bite-sized pieces of information and then running with it, but they're not really looking into what really is happening, if they really want to know.
Right. It's sort of the same scenario where people like to go to a church building and sit on rows and trust a guy in a robe to teach them, rather than searching and reading the book or whatever the source there is, and like digging deep as a seeker, and finding out the truth for themselves. So in general, I think people like to have things sort of researched, packaged, and delivered, so they can get back to, whatever those addictions may be.
The addictions, for sure. I agree with you, though. You're right. There's a lot of, and I had to work on that too. I remember that was one thing that was funny. I went to church every Wednesday and Sunday and sometimes Saturday nights growing up. And it was interesting because I had a situation that took place when I was a little kid, and I had I was a Catholic, and I became an altar server, and I got the Bible, and I went through CCD class, and then you have to go in, and you have to, you go sit down, and you tell the priest your sins, and they tell you, you have to do these many Hail Marys and all this stuff, and you had the rosary and all. And I remember we came out of there out of confession. And I said, because I was in the middle of confession, and I said, well, I cheated on a math test. And this was in like 5th grade or something with this girl and math. And I can remember her name to this day. Her name was Beth Baker. She and I cheated on this math test together. And so
Sorry, Beth. We hope you don't get in trouble now.
Come on. It was our first time, and we got in trouble, so it was pretty much our last time. But I remember telling that to the priest, and he said, and I said, but I've already talked to God about this, and I feel really bad about it. And he was like, wait a second, what do you mean you went to God? He's like, how do you talk to God? That's not the way this works. You went through CCD. So we sat outside in the church, and we're talking about it. And I said, well, the way I see it, my dad's a salesman. And he's like, my dad is a salesman. He works for this company. And, he's trying to go direct instead, eliminating the middleman, because the middleman gets, XYZ. I go, you kind of are. I mean, no, I'm not being mean. I'm just saying, but why can't I go direct? And so he was like, I think you need to look around, and you need to see what you like, and you probably need to go check out different religions. And I said, that's great, but I'm in middle school, and I live with my parents. So that's not going to go very far. But I remember I continued to keep going to church, but I remember I'd go online and I checked out all kinds of things. Buddhism, I checked out everything, and I started reading about stuff eventually when I was old enough to go online. But in the process, you looked up encyclopedias. You remember, like, encyclopedias and books and stuff. But that's where I draw a concept with that too, because I was looking for more, and I didn't want to just take that. Nothing against the Catholic Church, just saying I wanted to find more.
Well, I love the fact that you're a young lass, and he's like, why don't you just go try a new religion? He saw you were a troublemaker early on, right? And what's funny is, so you didn't have to sign like a non-circumvent there.
Non-disclosure agreement. Yeah, no.
NDA, non-circumvent. Oh, sorry, middleman. I'm going to God. Right? I'm going around you. I'll fake you out. Yeah, well.
He sends you out the other direction. You go out that exit road. Go out that road. You're not coming back.
Well, that's what I like about you. People that are courageous and seeking and love truth and like to talk about it. That's what I respect, people like that. Of all races, genders, religions, everything, okay? Just for the record. So let me ask you this. When you were young, so what was your dream? When you were young in middle school, what was your dream that you were going to be when you grew up?
Oh, my gosh, that's funny. Oddly enough, not at all what I'm doing, but I actually dreamed I was going to be in Congress. So I was going to be a senator. That's what I wanted to do.
Well, that's awesome, and it's not too late.
It's not. I was actually a presidential classroom scholar in high school, and did a lot of other stuff too. But it's not too late. But that's where I was going. That was the direction I was going, and then I kind of got a little derailed. And so I was at Lafayette Park and met some really interesting people from Russia, and they told me about how I would ruin my life if I continued to go down this pathway. But it was interesting. But I really wanted to. I mean, that's kind of the direction of where I was being kind of groomed toward that direction. Not that I haven't thought about it, since then. But I obviously am not doing that right now.
Interesting. So begs the question: you have quite a following now, and you have influence with a lot of people. Now you're not really in the realm of politics because you help a lot of people see how to get free from, I'll just call it like psychological hang-ups or abusive relationships and such, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
So, well, you could sort of, transition over into politics.
I mean, I think one of the things that's missing, and like we go back to the debate comment, a lot of things that are missing in politics today is that really educated sense of thought and understanding that it's not black and white. And I think that's the biggest issue we have in society, psychologically speaking, because so many people are operating from that. They're operating from the black and white thing. It's either this or it's not. You're either an angel or you're the devil. I'm either going to put you on this pedestal or I'm going to villainize you. Right? And so that's what's happening in the news. That's what's happening in politics. And I think that if there were more people that were not black and white thinkers and could actually bring some sort of, commonality and connection with people, I think it could be very interesting because you could open the doors to communication and I think a more wiser thought process.
No doubt. Well, I think you should keep an open mind on that because it's the era we're in is where non-politicians are running for office and becoming leaders, right? And I think it'll trend more that way. And I think it's a good thing because everybody's sort of fed up with the status quo and the career politicians and everything.
True.
So I believe that these positions of decision and power are going to be filled by outsiders. The question and the concern is which outsiders are going to fill them, right?
Exactly.
Depending on whatever you want to see happen, So, so my question now is, so how did you get into I don't even know what to call your field now. You are on many radio stations and social media, and you have a following, and it's not really arts and entertainment, right?
Yeah, I would probably say more of, you're right. It's more of like, I don't want to go full on, psychological, but I would say mindset, maybe mindset entertainment, awareness, self-awareness.
Edutainment.
Exactly.
And you're also a life coach, really.
Exactly.
Tell people how to get their stuff together and live a life that makes sense, right?
Exactly. Yeah, and so life coaching is great. I have some therapists that work with me and some physicians, and it's great because and I work with clients all over the world. So, things are different, so you have to accommodate for those types of things. But it's really awesome because what I do basically from the beginning to the end is most clients come to me, they find me on YouTube or they find me on the radio, we connect, I help them understand the toxicity that they're in, the toxic relationship. We understand all sides of it. We work through it. We start beginning to figure out ourselves and our identity because we lose our identity in that toxic relationship, especially if we've been in it for a very long time. Because we keep giving of ourselves more and more and more. We keep losing ourselves. And a lot of people are in relationships where they're not allowed to hang out with their family. They're not allowed to see their kids from a previous marriage. Those types of things. They're limited to who they can spend time with. They're not allowed to do this. And so they become regulated with this person, and this person basically is taking away their freedoms, but yet the other person's allowing them to take away their freedoms. And so we lose ourselves. So then we have to figure out who we are, and then we start working on that, and I help the client figure out exactly through a process, and I have all these little processes we do, and then we get to the point where the person realizes who they are and what they've missed, and then we start looking at that relationship really introspectively and really understanding how we got there in the process of being in it. We don't want to just jump out of it, because if we jump out of it, we're going to have regret, we're going to have sadness, we might not be ready to leave it. We have to be so ready to leave that or to change that. And one of the biggest things is changing our own issues. Once we change our issues and the way we see things in our programming, at that point, we can actually aid and abet in the relationship. And the person's either going to augment and change on their own because you're not giving them the same things back to them that they're used to. You take an example of fight. So like two people are in a relationship and they fight. They're having a fight again. That fight's going to be that same type of fight, day in and day out, the same type of comments, the same type of either running away or yelling or getting physical. It's the same type of thing. We go through the same, and we never resolve anything. And it's just like this over and over again, circular. So I basically help people to get out of those situations, figure it out, Then they can decide if they want to stay or they want to go, and then we process through that. And so it's usually a huge process, but it's a life-changing process. And I love walking clients through that because I know how to do it, and I've been successful in doing it. And it's nice because you really get to see somebody go from one extreme over here of really being extremely unhappy and not knowing who they are to all of a sudden, wow, I'm seeing it. And I don't want to do this because I actually see the value in myself that I'm not going to continue to allow this or this behavior in my life. So it's seeing that value personally and not getting the value from ourselves from somebody else.
Well, that was a lot of very good nuggets of truth there. And, I'm thinking the whole time, I'm thinking how paradoxical it is that part of us wants to fall in love and be, it's like all the songs, you want to lose yourself in someone, right? Mm. And I know all the songs are like so, ridiculous, all the silly love songs. But there's part of us, though, that we do, and in fact, I think we're created to sort of become one with someone, right? Mm-hmm. And you sort of merge your souls together and all. And you want to it's like the more you're in love, the more you want to give to that other person. So that's the thing, whatever that's called, that's abused.
Right.
When it's not in a healthy, with two whole people that are both giving.
Exactly.
Right? Because if you have a giver and a taker or whatever, and we all play roles of, complicated variations of giving and taking, within that relationship. But it's like, what is that thing called? Is there a name for that? Like that thing that makes, we're desiring to be one with someone, right?
We're desiring to find, I think, completion or having that fulfillment. And the problem with that inherently is that's inherently the problem. Is that there is no fulfillment outside of ourselves.
That's right.
There is no solidarity outside of ourselves. And so it's like because the attachment style issue, remember, it's like we all have attachment styles. And so whether, let's say we're anxious, or let's say we're avoidant, or let's say, there's multiple, because there's lots of variations outside of secure. And so depending on that, that's when you see maybe more of your cluster B dynamics and certain things too. So you might see somebody has maybe narcissistic tendencies or borderline tendencies or whatever. And that's also based on our attachment styles, our environment, the way we were raised, our parents' dynamic, genetic. But that attachment style is interesting because we might be, for example, anxious. Like we like to know what the person's thinking, and we really worry about stuff, we get really anxious if we don't hear from them, if they don't text us for a few hours, and oh my God, what are they doing? And worried. And the other person might be super avoidant, and you've picked a totally avoidant person. So basically you've picked somebody that can never fulfill what you want. You see, and so many of us go into those things and those relationships exactly like that. And if you really kind of start looking back, and this is something that I really help clients, let's look at mom. Let's look at dynamic with mom. Let's look at dynamic with dad. Let's talk about dad and what he is. Let's talk about mom and look at her, because a lot of that goes into the persons or the people that we pick throughout our lives to be in relationships with.
Yeah, that's very profound and simple at the same time. So, that you need two anxious little hummingbirds together, right? Or you need two avoidant sort of porcupines. That'll work. Is that what you're saying? Because, opposites attract, but also opposites attack later, right?
Oh, yeah.
I've seen that. And
you have to be okay with it. So if you're an avoidant, that's the other thing, too, is that sometimes when you're an avoidant, somebody might be much more of an avoidant, and that can also have people drift.
Hey, I can out-avoid you.
You can?
The game's on. I can always one-up your avoidance. No,
oh, my Lord.
No, joking.
Are we ready? Let's do it.
I'm talking about just a scenario of, I was just painting a theoretical scenario. So, yeah, I'd say I'm more on the anxious side. I like to talk and keep it going and be connected,
I get it.
Which one do you think you are?
Well, I've been working on it a lot, so I found myself mostly insecure, except for when it's something that I still am dealing with. Like, because we all deal with our core wounds, we're all dealing with them. We're all dealing with our childhood stuff, and I've been processing that for a while and really working on that. But when I do catch myself in a relationship, I can find myself being avoidant. I don't because when I look at my childhood, I watched my parents avoid the elephant in the room every day. Right. And so you watch it. And, growing up, you don't think, oh, they have issues or this is their problem. You think, oh, all parents are this way. It's not like you got 9 sets. It's not like you went on a game show when you were born and they're like, here's 9 sets of different parents. Ask them all the questions you want. You don't know how to speak, but ask them and then find the ones you want and then we'll pair you with them, right? We just get paired with, with this group. You know, we get paired with these 2 people, or some people have multiple parents, some people have 1 parent, but we get paired with this group and then we deal with it, and you kind of learn because you're around them, and most of us averagely around them for 18 years, some less, some more. But, you know, in the same household, and that really impacts you. And so I remember my mom avoiding issues and my dad avoiding issues. And together I could see that they were super avoidant. And I think that's also what changes people too. Because when you get super avoidant, sometimes that can save a relationship to the point where you're not really dealing with the big things. And so you just kind of let everything just slide. Now, the value of that and how great the relationship is, I don't know. But you're not really arguing, right? So some people never argue. That could be too avoidance. So it's interesting, you know, and then sometimes that can also, there's nobody there that's anxious to hold the relationship together, right? So, we're trying to get to that secure dynamic, and that can be hard because we keep finding people that take us into that trauma that we dealt with, take us into those childhood wounds that we're dealing with. And I think most of us are trying to right those wrongs, and we're trying to right them in our adult life.
Makes a lot of sense. So I guess you sort of grew up in an avoidant atmosphere. But once you learned about that concept, you've probably slowly worked to be more balanced.
Yes. Oh,
right?
Definitely.
And
definitely.
that's kind of what we all do, is any knowledge you get, you sort of try to move to balance. So we're all getting a little better all the time, right?
Exactly.
Okay, so you got out of school at Grapevine and you went to maybe university. And I'm wondering how you got from, you know, being in debate and then going to college, and then how you got into the profession you're in.
Well, you know, it's interesting because I really wanted to do the political thing, and then that kind of changed. And I actually got a scholarship, and I turned it down to a big debate school because I was actually going through quite a bit of burnout at that time. So I was having like 40-year-old burnout in my senior year. So I literally decided to go against all that, which was kind of stupid, and I should have taken a break. I should have been like these other kids that go backpacking in Europe for 6 months or something. Should have done something like that. Maybe should have sat on my butt at the house for 6 months. I think I would have changed my mind if I would have had that time. But I'm happy with my direction I went, you know, and going through school and educating yourself. You know, a lot of it was psychology, communication, understanding. And then you start looking at different things too and realizing, if we don't get this right and this right, the rest of it really doesn't matter. I mean, you can make a ton of money doing something, but I have a lot of clients that make a ton of money. I have clients that have private jets. I got clients, they're not happy. They come to me because they're not happy, and and this is going out of control. You know, because our mind is basically fueling our thoughts. Our thoughts are constantly telling us how our life is or who we are. And if we can't control those things, it doesn't really matter all the stuff we have. All the stuff we have doesn't really matter. And so that's where I figured, okay, this actually has teeth, and this actually has something in a direction. And so that's why I'm really happy that I went this direction, because you can help so many people. And it doesn't matter, like, you know, how much they make, who they are, what they do. It's across the board. And it's just trying to help them regulate. And I came up with something a long time ago. It was about 20 years ago. I started really analyzing the mind, and I realized that I had a lot of thoughts in my mind that were just all over the place, like really positive, really negative, and sometimes really neutral. But underneath those thoughts were also the core wounds, and those core wounds had these core beliefs, and those core beliefs were holding me back. And so when I started realizing my core beliefs and figuring out how to do that, that's when I came up with an entire process of how to really eliminate some of this like clutter, and how to really understand what this clutter means, and then how to take the thoughts and figure out what thought means what, and why these thoughts are consecutive, and what the meaning behind that is, and how to eliminate it. And that's what really got me into doing what I'm doing now, and, you know, kind of propelled into the radio show and really getting the word out in that. And that started back in 2010 was the radio show. And maybe it was before that. And then, you know, the 2 books, and I actually have 2 other books that I'm writing right now, but I haven't been able to get to it, to be honest with you. And then also collaboration with other folks in the industry, and really kind of saying, okay, what's the next step? What do we have to do? And I think it all goes back to thoughts. I mean, if you can change the thought, and you can control the thought, and you understand where the emotion is coming from, I can't pump in air that's depressed. I can't pump in happy air in here and go, okay, you're happy, or oh, you're depressed. And I was like, it's all here. But most people don't hear that anymore. They don't. And that's the issue, right? It's like the music that nobody hears. Like, when you go to the restaurant and you're like, huh, I hear, you don't really hear the song and somebody else hears the song. That's kind of like most people's thoughts.
It's been blocked out. Right?
Exactly. But it's still there. It's still going.
That's very deep.
Let's tell a joke.
As a man thinketh, so is he.
So is he. I like it. It is.
So let's stay on that a second. I've been aware of that concept. I've worked on it through the decades a little bit, and a lot of people that'll hear this, know what you're talking about. Some people that's new to hear that, So for me, it's like, you hear there's a verse and to take thoughts captive. But that's really sort of just grabbing negative thoughts and, lining them up to the truth. Mm-hmm. But how else do you, what's an exercise, or how do people actually try to discern and wade through their thoughts?
Well, one of the best things you can do, honestly, and this is a good takeaway on the show today, is that you can actually write down. So one of the things that I like to do is, if you're having stress, anxiety, fear, that's the best time to journal, right then and there. Like, why aren't you journaling? I mean, why are you just sitting in that? Because it's like, oh, I'm going to sit in it. Well, just make it useful. Do something with it. So I like people to write in those moments for 10 to 15 minutes and just write out every thought. Don't sit there and analyze it. Oh, this is a stupid thought, or, don't do that. Don't do that. But just write down every single thought that you have for 15 minutes. And do that like every day for a week, and then compare. And so what we do a lot of times is I just have people just I don't want anybody typing it. Okay, there's a whole reason for this to your pen, right? There's a connection, right? So you don't want to type it, because when people type it, they also change syntax and the way things sound. And that's not going to help. Your brain speaks a certain way, your thoughts are a certain way. If I'm attacking a thought that I think is the genuine thought, and it's not, that's not going to work either. So then we kind of compare all these lists and we look at the different ones that are coming up, because a lot of them are just like daily issues, right? Or stress issues, or, circumstantial. But then you have those other ones that are deeper, and those go back to the core wounds. Right. And so that's what we have to figure out, because that's what's blaring. I'm not good enough, or I'm ugly, or I'm never going to be loved, or people don't love me, or I'm unlovable. And all those big ones are the ones that create all the problems in our lives. The I'm unlovable one is amazing how much pain and suffering that does to people. Nobody cares about me. Everybody's going to leave me. Everybody's going to leave me is one of the most challenging thoughts ever, because if you really think everybody's going to leave you, they are. And sometimes you will actually make them leave you. You will actually do what you have to do subconsciously to get them out of your life. And then you go, see?
I was right.
Yeah, see, I was right. Everybody leaves me.
Yeah.
And those are the things that we really dig into, because those are the issue problems that we have. And then those thoughts interact and interfere in all of our other thoughts and everything we do. We do and don't do things based on those thoughts.
I love the way you have this sort of honest, vulnerable process of, at that moment, write it all down.
Yeah.
Because then you could manage them easier.
Exactly.
That's really good. Yeah, that's great. I hope people, do that. I'll try to do that, because with me, I'll think about thoughts and like, why am I thinking that? I'll do it all in my head sometimes. And just try to think right and clean things up and get on track. But I think writing them down would give you a way easier way to manage that.
It does. And then we kind
of nobody's going to see
ones.
it or judge you, right?
Right. Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm not judging you.
Google Earth could zoom in on it. You got to be careful. So.
Well, you're right, and that's the thing. What you are sending an email to me, or you are sending a picture of them. That's true. There's a possibility of digital, but in the process, no, there's no judgment in this process, and we all have this. I mean, the thing is that judging anybody's real issues really is just idiotic, because most of us are dealing with issues, or we've dealt with issues, or we've had similar issues. And the judgment is just irrelevant. And I figure that when we do have judgment on something about somebody, no, I'm not talking about, there's some really things that I just won't bring up on the show that I find, just not correct, like child abuse and stuff like that. Different story. But I'm talking about like, love issues, sexual issues, whatever, all those things. It's like everybody's had it. Why are we not just talking about it? And let's bring it to light and figure it out, because all it is just spooking you anyway. And then let's figure out how to lessen that impact, and let me basically shoot holes through that logic is what I do. Basically getting the brain to realize that's not true. Even if it's past historical reference. Like even if you were left by multiple people, okay, that's fine. That happened, this happened, this happened, and I can see why you're drawing this conclusion, but let's get to the depth of it and stop this from continuing to happen, because what we're doing is we're finding people that are going to leave us, we're executing plan, we're also taking care of what we want, because that is our truth, even though it's not true.
That's true.
That's true.
Well, that's really good stuff. So you started. I mean, I still don't know exactly how you got from. Here's why I'm drilling back on this.
Okay.
Because a lot of people have dreams. Mm-hmm. A lot of people like, well, I want to do this big dream or this big endeavor. Whether it's a entrepreneurial thing or a ministry or, a business thing. And people have their day job, I mean, a lot of fortunate people don't have to go to a day job and all that, but a lot of people do. So, how did you get, at one point you must have been inspired by what you were learning and you're like, oh, I got to get it out there and help other people. Right. Mm-hmm. Okay. So how'd you get to how'd you manifest that dream?
That's interesting. I think a lot of things had to coalesce at the same time to make that happen. Mm-hmm. So, you're right. Everybody has their day jobs, right? So at the time when I really started like kind of thinking, okay, this is really, I had actually started getting into some entertainment stuff. So we got into some film and TV and was shooting some different things and, assistant directing some things and really going through that process. And it was really creative and very cool. And it was interesting. But again, you go back to the dynamic on set and you have a lot of people having a lot of issues. And it was interesting. Again, it was like my whole life, it kept bringing forward. It was like the underbelly or the backside of everything that's going on. You see the interactions, you see the miscommunication, you see the person living in their thoughts and putting that on other people. And I think I've always understood the human condition. And I felt like if this is happening, no matter what you do and wherever you are,
right, even with the cool people making a
cool
movie,
people.
Probably more so than anywhere else.
Oh yeah, but it was, and that was kind of my awakening call, which was like, it's not what you thought you were gonna do, it's not what you set out, but this is what you're good at, and that's hard sometimes for all of us, right? It's like some of us, we want to be the athlete. We want to be the baseball player. We want to be the basketball player. We want to be the football player. And that's great. Maybe we played that in high school and maybe we played a little in college and you really have that dream. And then, that happens, whatever, multiple different things that happen. But all of a sudden you start realizing, what is it that I'm really, really good at? And it's hard because some of us are really good at different things. I'm sure you're good at 1,000 things, but it's like honing in on that thing or those one or two things that you're really, really talented at. And I really believe that people have God-given gifts. I believe that we have like ultimate gifts that we're giving that we're consciously aware to. And God can be the air you breathe or whatever you believe in that is. But there's an overarching thing that I feel like we come into this world that we have the ability to do. And I think that's where it finally hit me is that, and growing up with the situation I grew up with my whole life and having a health condition my whole life and almost dying on the operating table 3 different times and having all that happen to me beginning at such a young age really impacted me too. So the whole concept of understanding people started when I was a very, very small child because I didn't know what was going to happen the very next day. I remember sitting in hospitals on gurneys, having transfusions, this and that, things happening, my mom sitting there worried, all this stuff going on as a little child and not really understanding why this was happening, being in the hospital for hundreds of days, like all kinds of things. And the impact that had, and then living that life for years and years and years on end, not knowing when it was going to end. And so you really come from a different space when you walk through that space. It's not a normal life. My life that I experienced as a child is a life that a lot of people experience when they're about to die. when they're in their older age and something happens and they get cancer or something happens like that, and they have to go through this entire awakening and spiritual awakening. And maybe they live, maybe they don't, but they go through this spiritual awakening and they come out the other side one way or another. That happened to me when I was young. Okay, so that changes your entire dynamic. There's no like, oh, I'm going to create this business plan or I'm going to do this or that. It has nothing to do with that. Your whole belief system in life is so much deeper than you could ever imagine. There's no going back. And so the political thing was great, but that goes back to psychological aspects. All these things were about being able to communicate with people and understanding why people do what they do and being able to get to some sort of middle ground where we can understand each other. And I realized that was the same. Even when I was assistant director doing that stuff, I was still mitigating people and dealing with those things. So it was since I was a child, I knew that's what I was going to do. I just didn't know what it was. Right? Because you don't know the answer.
So you knew your gift, but you didn't know what arena you were going to.
You don't know what titles there are or anything like that. And titles mean nothing. But, you don't know what that is, and what does that mean? What am I going to be doing? I always knew I was a good writer. That was something I did know. I was always a good writer. And I would write for my mom. I'd write, deep thought processes, like 15, 16 pages, like dissertations on thoughts of, defining this value and understanding it within the concept of beauty or the concept of society or whatever it is. And I would give her those types of things. And I knew I was a good writer. But I knew that I had to get out of that shell of just writing. Like writing is good because it helps and it processes things, but also you have to be able to know it and you have to be able to walk the walk and you have to be able to do it. And so that's where I had to figure out how to do that and how to connect with my emotions. And being through all those tragic things, you have a lot of sadness and anger as a child, a lot of resentment, and you have to process that. And so there's a lot of I have clients now that I deal with that, issues with health issues, and it's very interesting to work with them because they honestly have PTSD around health issues, any small thing, and I feel it myself. That's something I've been working through. I just dislocated my patella last week, and it scared the crap out of me. And it was not a big deal in the grand scheme of my health issues. I mean, for a lot of people, that's really bad. But I got really down on myself, and you start going back through the past of how you weren't able to do things, and you were bedridden, and all that horrible stuff. And so there's a lot of people out there that are dealing with that. And so I just think that that's where the real meat and potatoes are, I think of it. And I know that you write and that you really, you have these amazing philosophies that you share with people and really help them to make changes in their life and to see where they're coming from. And it came from a grassroots effort from your past. And so I understand that about you. And I think that's what resonates.
So I have to ask, did you relocate your patella? And it sort of starts growing back.
I know. I had to put it back in the socket. I had to put it back into place. Yeah, I literally, I was actually getting out of bed to get water, and I stepped wrong. And I had a big workout the night before. I mean, I had probably done 300 squats and everything else, but I wasn't working out at the time. I wasn't on the football field. I wasn't doing anything like that. But I literally stepped. I just misstepped. And it just came all the way out to the left side, on my knee, and I had to put it back in.
300.
Yeah, I do a lot of workout when I work out. I like to. I have to because of letting go of stress and really, I want to. And your body is your temple, and to some degree, you got to figure that out. But yeah, so I had a great workout the night before, and then that happened, and I was like, oh.
It seems like after 300 squats, your patella would be like super patella.
You would think it would be. That's why I don't understand. So they said it was just kind of a freak thing, that it just happened. So, yeah, but it hurt. I mean, talk about pain and agony.
Do you want to talk about what you were in the hospital for?
I can. It's just kind of a rare deal, but I can. If you want to go there.
Well, it's it's something that's question marks sort of in the air.
Okay, well, definitely.
And you're all the millions that love you may want to know now.
Okay, yeah. I've talked about it a little bit, not completely all out there, but yeah. So I have a condition that when I finally got diagnosed, 180 people in the world had, and I was in my early 20s. So I have a venous lymphatic malformation. So I have a second lymphatic system, and that's rare. And
so Venus.
Yeah.
You're a Venus type goddess.
A Venus. Yes, the goddess of Venus. Yeah, but it's very interesting. So let's say you are in the womb. So you are conceived at A, right? So you're conceived at A. Let's just say that's little A. and A, B, C, D. You develop this elementary system of vessels that carry nutrition from the umbilical cord into the newborn baby, into the unborn baby, and you're going through that. At MNOP, you eradicate that old system of vessels and stuff like that, and you have you create the system that you have now, like that takes nutrition and everything, and it's a very highly it's a very interesting introspective system. Mine never eradicated that elementary system. So what happens here is you have to be careful because they can compete with one another. There's a lot of other things that can happen in the process. And so we're not sure if obviously it wasn't genetic because it's not genetic. So we don't know if it was something that maybe my mother took when she was pregnant or if it was just what happened. We still don't know that.
So you have a very complex and fragile system is what you're saying.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
The lymphatic system.
Yeah, so it's like you have that, and so you have to be super careful, but it caused a lot of pain and suffering in my life. And see, in the beginning, we didn't know what it was. So
right, I'm sure many of those days and hours and months in the hospital was everybody trying to figure out what it was.
Yeah, and
you probably helped. Yeah, you probably helped other people down the road from all that research they did with you and everything, right?
Oh yeah, and we eventually over time I found doctors and surgeons that were working with this. It was very rare, but I had surgeries that were done on me that weren't the right surgeries. They thought I had a double hernia. One time, so one surgery was a double hernia surgery. There is no double hernia. There was no hernia. You know what I'm saying? And I almost died on that table because of the lymph and the amount of lymph that I lost and everything else. So there's multiple things that I went through and it's painful. And that's where a lot of people are health-wise. I mean, a lot of people have dealt with cancer, everything else, and they've gone through it. And so I understand the pain and suffering from that. But that's hard, especially when people don't know what it is. I think that's the hardest thing.
I'm so glad that you made it through all that. And it helped develop who you are as a person.
Exactly.
There's no doubt your experience did. You know what the number one cause of death in America is?
What?
The number one cause of death. People might think heart attack.
Depression?
No, it's mistakes at hospitals in the medical industry.
Oh.
I read a thing on it last year. It's unbelievable.
But
I mean, they're all doing their best.
But there's a lot of mistakes.
They're humans.
That's true. Humans doing. I mean, it's just humans trying to figure it out, right?
Yes. So. This has been so good so far, and we're on the home stretch. So here's a question. You're such a vibrant, high energy, intelligent human. Here's a question I ask everybody towards the end of the show, and it's brought to you by our sponsor. This is a book that it took decades of me seeking and searching for answers, and I think I've got some in this book. So check it out. It's on Amazon or whatever.
Cool.
Yeah. So it's called Why. A lot of issues about why are we here? Why are we suffering? Why does the human go through what they go through? So, one of the questions I ask though, and my sponsor, asked me to ask this. So, tell me, what do you think about God?
What do I think about God?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good question. I'm a big believer, so that's something that totally is a part of my life. There's no question. I wake up and I understand that I'm here for the reason I'm here, and I learn every day. I have meditation. I try to download things and try to understand. I try to be in the place I need to be at the right place, at the right time. Try to be the best person I can be. Honestly, because I feel like that's an indication of the God within ourselves, and I look for God within others, and I think that without that, I don't know how much you could be really on purpose. And I'm not trying to, there's no Bible beating here or anything like that, but I really think that it's just the air you breathe, quite honestly. And that's what I think about God.
When you said the word purpose, I think what you're saying is, like, if there is no God, right? Mm-hmm. Like, just for a minute, let's say, we just all happen to be here by chance, because billions of years ago, a piece of lightning hit a piece of enzyme or something.
Right.
What purpose would we have? It's like maybe, I can imagine both scenarios. Like if there is God, then I see purpose as easy, right? Because we're made in His image, and we want to display that character and help people to see truth and know light and be compassionate and stuff. But if you said for a moment there is no God at all, and we're just all here by chance and accidental, whatever, and we're going to all perish and rot away, Wouldn't it be harder to find purpose?
I think it would. I think you would have to really. I think the concept of understanding that there is God, if to me, it's the air I breathe. It's not a man to me or a female or anything. I think it's just all omniscient. But I think it's a lot easier to have to locate purpose that way. I think otherwise, if there, let's just say there wasn't, I think you would have to really instigate purpose in yourself and try to live to the level that you see is the level that's right for you. And I think that because I think, yeah, take it away. And how are we living our life? What are the values that we want to live our life by? Are we being true to our value? Are we seeing are we unconditionally actually loving ourselves? I'm not talking about narcissistic love. I'm not talking about any, do we really love ourselves and value ourselves? And I think if you can get to that point, whether or not one way or another you believe, then you're treating other people with respect and you're not allowing certain things in your life as well. So, but I do think that the God quotient adds that other dimension. But I think some people haven't figured that out yet, and that's okay. I mean, everybody's got to figure it out or decide what they want. And it's, again, like we talked about the mind, I am, right? Our thoughts make our reality. And so it kind of depends on what we're thinking, but we can augment that at any time.
Right. And I do think that everybody is in different steps and stages and paths, right? Mm-hmm. And I believe that the merciful Creator is holding it all together while everybody's going through their journey. And, that's, to me, it's such a fragile thing. It's like people go to the hospital and they're under the care of all these doctors and nurses and trying their best and everything. But I mean, I all my experiences being in the hospital, seeing people in the hospital and being around them and everything, I always see there's that missing spirit that's like keeping it all together. Because the humans are, it's like the nurse is on her phone with her boyfriend having a fight because he's a narcissist, right?
Right.
And she's a, whatever. And, but the patient still lives. You know what I mean? I feel like there's so many gaps in human effort.
I agree.
That it's got to be filled in the blanks by this caring Creator that's overseeing everything and, keeping us on path.
I think it's the glue, right? It's the glue. And sometimes it's hard to see the glue because sometimes things happen and it's hard to see it. And
sometimes, honestly, the glue doesn't hold it together.
Well, yeah, and sometimes
for whatever
it's
reason.
Not meant to be. Not meant to be held
exactly. For whatever, and that's why so much, I think, if you read the old poets and even, old scriptures where it says, well, if there is no God, then let's eat, drink, and be merry, lest tomorrow we die. Mm-hmm. But the new atheism is sort of like, oh no, we're noble and we're good and we care about the suffering, which is all a good thing. That's people trying to be, divine in nature. Mm-hmm. But it falls short because there's gaps we can't fill. And to me, it demands that there's got to be this supernatural side because there's things going on that humans just can't take credit for.
Miracles every day.
And just the fact that the creation's here.
Right.
And it's like it works so well without humans doing anything about it.
Exactly.
I mean, the sun's coming up and it warms us just perfectly.
Right. Some a little too much in summer.
Yeah,
But
in Texas, you move the Earth out of orbit 1 centimeter, and we're all going to die.
Exactly.
So I'm amazed by you, and I didn't even know that you went through that long struggle of being like with the mystery of what was wrong too. That's scary. A huge thing.
And I think also the God concept is balance to some degree. It's that balance, the yin yang, that balance we have, and that balance. And yeah, it was challenging, and it was a lot, and I learned a lot, and I'm glad that I learned it. Actually, it was so challenging and so painful, but I am glad that I learned it on the front end because I was able to make changes to my life or go the direction I needed to go based on that. And maybe that was always the calling.
Yeah, and it made you a person that was mature for your age. I'm sure you've sort of always been ahead of your time as far as development, right?
Always mature, yeah. Mm-hmm. It had to be. You couldn't wallow. You had to be. There was no option. I mean, and sometimes you look back at that and you wish you could have been more of a kid, but it is what it is, you know. And I try to be a child. I try to be more like a kid now. You know, I really try to get back to, you know, liking things that are just easy. I like to connect with things like going outside and walking in the grass. I like to play. I like fart jokes. I like things like that. And I like to feel, you know, I really think that if you're really happy with yourself, you're 5 years old all the time. And I want to be that way. And so I kind of just reconnect with my inner child that I didn't really get to connect with at that time. And I try to work on that. And that's something that I'm working on, honestly, every day, trying to really connect with that. And I think a lot of folks that are probably watching your show right now haven't had the chance to connect with their inner child. And if that's something that, you know, you want to do, that's something that you need to do because you didn't get a chance to live that. If you had to raise your brothers and sisters, or you were in a, you know, a challenging home life, and you know, and mom wasn't there, or dad was in prison, or whatever was going on, it's time to figure out, how do we connect with that inner child? And I think a lot of us need to do that.
That is such a huge subject that you just brought up. Mm-hmm. And, you know, children, what happens to children?
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Like, there's a comedian, David Reagan or whatever, Reagan. He's so funny. He's talking about, you know, kids are so happy and they're so full of life, and we could all learn from them, right? But what do parents do? You got to grow up, you know, it's like, quit jumping on the bed, get over here, do your homework. It's like society and parents, we strap them with growing up, getting in the grind and worrying about, you know, their 401k. And really, we should all just be childlike.
We should. And it's that balance. It's having that balance, you know, trying to figure that out. And I agree with you. It's we all need to take a look at that, figure out that.
Well, I don't know how to end this thing, but we'll just won't end it. We'll just kind of walk away here. But thank you for coming out today and being on the show, and tell everybody how to see you, because you're everywhere.
Oh, and I want to be able to promote your show as well. So hopefully you can get me, y'all can get me a copy or whatever. I can put it on my social medias and talk about it. Yeah,
we'll do all that. But tell us how to find you.
Oh, how to find me. Okay. Definitely. You can find me on AshleyBerges.com, AshleyBerges.com. You can find me on YouTube, and just go to YouTube and put in Ashley, Berges. You can find me on Spreaker, Stitcher, Spotify.
Okay, we got it. We got it. See, you're the only one I watch.
Okay, cool.
You and maybe Greg Gutfeld. He's funny.
Nice.
So thank you for watching today. Ashley is amazing, and we love you. Bye.